All right, let's get right into it. We're going to tackle one of the biggest ideas we have about ourselves and, well, explore how it might just be completely wrong.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. What if there's a lie that's so big, so deeply woven into how we think, that we just accept it as a fact of life? A lie that kind of shapes everything, what we think we can achieve, our goals, even who we believe we are.
And there it is. You know the one. The idea that after a certain age, your brain just locks in. That the person you are right now, well, that's the person you're always going to be. Today, we're going to completely dismantle that idea.
So, how are we going to do that? We're going to look at 3 incredible and, frankly, impossible-sounding true stories. These are stories about real people whose brains did things that for a long time, science said just couldn't happen. Let's start with the first one.
Okay, so first up, meet Henry Molaison. This is back in the 1950s. He was suffering from these absolutely debilitating seizures, so he had this radical brain surgery to try and stop them. And the good news? It worked. The seizures were gone. The bad news? It took something from him that changed everything.
And this is where things get really strange. It was a complete paradox. His past was perfectly preserved. I mean, he could tell you stories from his childhood with crystal clear detail, but the present? Poof! Gone in seconds. If you walked into a room, introduced yourself, and came back a minute later, he'd have no idea who you were. Every new experience was like writing on sand right at the ocean's edge.
So here's where it gets truly mind-bending. Scientists gave him this really tricky task. He had to trace a shape by only looking at its reflection in a mirror. And what happened was just astounding. Day after day, his hands got better, faster, more accurate. His body was learning. But, and here's the kicker, every single day when they showed him the task, he would insist with total sincerity that he had never ever seen it before in his life. His brain was changing, adapting, and learning, all completely behind the curtain of his own awareness.
Okay, on to our next story. This one shows a totally different kind of struggle, and an even more incredible kind of triumph. This is Barbara Arrowsmith. Now, she wasn't recovering from an injury. She was born with a brain that, according to the experts, just wasn't wired for learning.
I mean, can you even imagine how frustrating that would be? Being able to see the individual letters on a page, but not grasp what the words actually mean? Or looking at a clock and just seeing numbers and shapes, but not being able to tell the time? The experts basically gave her a life sentence. This is your brain, and it's not going to get any better.
And this is the turning point. This is where her story could have just ended, but it didn't. Instead of just accepting her fate, she decided to fight it. She completely rejected the idea that her limits were permanent. She essentially became her own brain's physical therapist. She started inventing these mental exercises, puzzles, memory drills, all specifically designed to target the parts of her mind that were the weakest. And you know what? Slowly, painstakingly, it actually started to work. She was literally building new mental pathways from scratch.
Our final story is, well, it's maybe the most dramatic of them all. This one isn't about slow, deliberate practice. It's about a sudden, traumatic event that unlocked something absolutely extraordinary.
The sequence of events here is it's mind-blowing. One minute, he's a regular guy. The next, after getting a severe concussion from an accident in a pool, he wakes up and feels this powerful, new urge to play the piano. And he doesn't just tap out a simple tune. He sits down and plays complex, beautiful music, as if he'd been training his entire life. The catch? He'd never had a single lesson.
Think about that. In response to a massive injury, his brain didn't just heal. It completely reorganized itself. It rerouted its own pathways so profoundly that it created an entirely new ability, seemingly out of thin air.
So, okay, we've got 3 stories that honestly sound like science fiction. A man who learns without memory, a woman who rebuilds her own mind, and a man who wakes up from an accident, a musical genius. This brings us to the big question. How do you connect these dots? What's the secret ingredient that makes all of this possible? Well, it turns out it's not a fluke. It's a fundamental property of how all of our brains are built to work.
You have to forget that old idea of the brain as a piece of hardware, something that's just fixed from the factory. That's the old model. The new model, proven by stories just like these, is that the brain is like living software. It's constantly updating and rewriting its own code with every single thing you do and think.
And here it is, the key concept. The scientific name for this superpower is neuroplasticity. Neuro for neuron, right? the nerve cells in our brains, and plasticity, meaning it's malleable, it's changeable. This one word explains everything. It's why Henry's brain could learn, why Barbara could rebuild, and why Derek could transform.
Okay, so this is all fascinating science for sure, but let's bring it home. What does the fact that your brain is constantly changing actually mean for your day-to-day life?
We all have these thoughts, right? I'm just not a morning person. I'm terrible at math. I could never learn a new language. We treat these statements like they're hard facts, but neuroplasticity tells us they're not facts at all. They're just thoughts. They're just the current state of the wiring.
And when those thoughts pop up, you gotta remember these stories. Remember Henry, whose brain proved that learning is possible even under the most extreme limitations. Remember Barbara, who showed that with focused effort, you can actually target and strengthen your weaknesses. And remember Derek, whose story shows the brain's incredible, unpredictable potential to adapt.
And this is the final crucial takeaway. We often look at talented or successful people and just think, wow, they're so lucky. But this science completely reframes that idea. Change, improvement, even talent, it's not just a lottery ticket, it's a process. It's something that happens through our actions, our thoughts, and our habits, which are all physically shaping the very brain that we have.
So that leaves us with one last question, and this one is for you. Knowing that your brain is not fixed, knowing that it's constantly being shaped by your choices, what new pathways are you going to decide to build starting today?